Disowned and Damned. My family cut me off just for dating someone they didn't approve of. My name is Thaddeus, but most people call me Thad. I grew up in a small town in Indiana, a place where everyone knows everyone, and secrets are as rare as unicorns. My family, the Braxtons, had a reputation for being upright, conservative, and unyieldingly traditional. My parents, Luther and Prudence, raised my sister, Seraphina, and me with ironclad rules and expectations. We were expected to marry within our race, religion, and social class. No exceptions. Life was predictable, almost stiflingly so, until I met her. Aaliyah. She was everything my family detested, a free spirit, outspoken, and most notably, not white. I met her during my first year of college at Purdue. She was studying art, and her passion was infectious. Her parents were Nigerian immigrants, and they were the kindest people I'd ever met. Aaliyah had a way of making me feel alive, breaking the chains of my rigid upbringing. I was in love, but I knew my family would never accept her. For months, I kept our relationship a secret. I couldn't bear the thought of losing my family, but I also couldn't imagine my life without Aaliyah. We were careful, meeting in places where no one from my hometown would see us. But secrets have a way of surfacing, and ours did in the most dramatic fashion. One night, I brought Aaliyah to a party at a friend's house, thinking it was safe. I was wrong. My cousin Jeremiah was there. He spotted us and didn't waste a second before texting my parents. By the time I got home that night, they were waiting for me, fury etched into their faces. "Who the hell is she, Thaddeus?" my father roared. "Do you have any idea what people will think?" My mother, normally the picture of calm, was shaking with anger. "You know our values, Thaddeus. How could you betray us like this?" I tried to explain, to make them see that Aaliyah was a wonderful person, but they wouldn't listen. My father disowned me on the spot, his face a mask of disgust. My mother, tears streaming down her face, echoed to his sentiment. "Get out, Thaddeus. You're no son of ours." I packed my things and left that night, heartbroken and terrified. I had no idea what the future held, but I knew one thing. I couldn't give up on Aaliyah. Little did I know, my nightmare was just beginning. Homeless and cut off from my family's financial support, I crashed at a friend's place for a few days while I figured out my next move. Aaliyah, bless her soul, offered to let me stay with her, but I didn't want to burden her or her family. Pride can be a stubborn thing. I found a cheap, rundown apartment and got a job at a local diner. The work was grueling and the pay was abysmal, but it was something. Aaliyah stood by me, her unwavering support the only thing keeping me sane. Still, the pain of losing my family gnawed at me constantly. One evening, as I was cleaning tables, my sister Seraphina walked in. I hadn't seen her since that fateful night. She looked around, clearly uncomfortable, before spotting me. "Thad," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Can we talk?" We sat down at one of the empty tables. The awkwardness was palpable. "Why are you here, Sarah?" I asked, my voice harsher than I intended. I miss you, Thad. It's been weird without you at home. Mom and Dad, they're not the same." I snorted. "Of course they're not. They kicked out their own son over something as stupid as who I'm dating." Seraphina flinched. "It's not stupid to them. You know how they are. But I don't agree with them. I think they're wrong. I don't know how to help." Her words were a balm to my wounded heart. We talked for hours, sharing stories and reminiscing about better times. It was the first time since the fallout that I felt a glimmer of hope. But my newfound optimism was short-lived. The next day, I received a letter from my parents' lawyer. They were cutting me off completely. No inheritance, no family business, nothing. I was officially dead to them. I was devastated. Aaliyah held me as I cried, my body racked with sobs. "We'll get through this, Thad," she whispered. "We have each other." Her strength gave me the will to keep going, but the weight of my family's rejection was a constant burden. And the worst part? It was far from over. Life trudged on, each day a grind of work, study, and trying to build a future with Aaliyah. Our relationship grew stronger through the adversity, but the shadow of my family's rejection loomed large. One day, as I was finishing my shift at the diner, a man walked in who would change everything. His name was Ezekiel, an old family friend who had always been like an uncle to me. I hadn't seen him in years, and his presence was both comforting and jarring. "Thaddeus, my boy," he greeted, his voice a warm rumble. "I've heard about the fallout with your family. I wanted to see how you were holding up." I was taken aback but grateful. "I'm surviving, Ezekiel, just trying to make it day by day." He nodded thoughtfully. "Your parents are stubborn, Thad, but there are those of us who don't agree with how they handled things. We believe in you, in your right to choose your own path." Ezekiel's words were a lifeline. He offered me a job at his construction company, a significant step up from the diner. It was physically demanding work, but the pay was better, and it gave me a sense of purpose. With Ezekiel's help, I started to rebuild my life. Aaliyah and I moved into a slightly better apartment, and I began taking night classes to finish my degree. Slowly, the pieces were falling into place. But even as things improved, my family's disapproval remained a constant ache. Serafina continued to visit in secret, updating me on the family's happenings. My parents were as unyielding as ever, their pride and prejudices blinding them to anything else. Then came the wedding invitation that would test my resolve. Serafina was getting married, and despite everything, she wanted me there. "Please, Thad," she pleaded, "I want my brother at my wedding." I was torn. The thought of facing my parents again filled me with dread, but I couldn't let my sister down. Aaliyah encouraged me to go, her belief in me unwavering. "Show them you're not afraid," she said. "Show them that love is stronger than hate." With a heavy heart, I agreed. The wedding would be a confrontation of past and present, a chance to reclaim my place in the family or confirm my permanent exile. The stakes had never been higher. The day of Serafina's wedding arrived with a mix of dread and hope. Aaliyah and I dressed in our best, determined to make a statement. As we arrived at the venue, whispers followed us. My parents stood at the entrance, their expressions a mix of shock and anger. "Thaddeus, what are you doing here?" my mother hissed, her voice low but venomous. "I'm here for Serafina," I replied, my voice steady. "I'm her brother, and I have every right to be here." My father glared at Aaliyah. "You brought her, after everything." Aaliyah stepped forward, her gaze unwavering. "I'm here because I love Thad. I'm not going anywhere." The tension was palpable, but Serafina intervened, her face pale with worry. "Please, can we just have one day of peace? This is my wedding." My parents reluctantly stepped aside, allowing us to enter. The ceremony was beautiful, but I felt like an outsider looking in. Every glance, every whisper reminded me of the chasm between my family and me. At the reception, I tried to enjoy myself, but the atmosphere was stifling. My parents avoided me, their disapproval a constant presence. I was about to leave when Ezekiel approached me. "Don't let them get to you, Thad," he said, clapping a hand on my shoulder. "You're stronger than this." His words gave me the courage to stay. As the night wore on, I found myself surrounded by old friends and distant relatives who offered words of support. It was a small victory, but it meant the world. Then the unexpected happened. My father approached me, his expression unreadable. "Can we talk?" We stepped outside, the cool night air a stark contrast to the heated emotions inside. My father took a deep breath, struggling to find the right words. "I don't agree with your choices, Thaddeus, but you're still my son. I can't pretend that doesn't matter." It wasn't an apology, but it was a start. We talked for hours, not resolving everything, but finding a fragile truce. It was the first step toward healing, a glimmer of hope in the darkness. As Aaliyah and I left the wedding hand in hand, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time I felt like reconciliation was possible. Rebuilding a relationship with my parents was a slow, painful process. There were setbacks and moments of doubt, but Aaliyah's unwavering support kept me going. My mother softened first, her maternal instincts overcoming her prejudices. She started calling me our conversations awkward, but slowly becoming more genuine. My father was more stubborn. His pride and the fear of societal judgment held him back. But he, too, began to thaw, albeit reluctantly. It took countless arguments and heart-to-heart talks, but we slowly started to bridge the gap. The breakthrough came when Aaliyah and I decided to get married. We invited my parents, expecting them to refuse, but to our surprise, they accepted. The wedding was a small, intimate affair, filled with friends who had become family. When my parents walked in, I felt a mixture of relief and anxiety. My father approached Aaliyah, his expression solemn. "I'm sorry for everything," he said quietly. "Welcome to the family." Tears filled Aaliyah's eyes as she hugged him. It was a moment of profound healing, the culmination of years of struggle and pain. The journey to acceptance was far from over, but we had taken the first steps. My family would never be perfect, and there would always be challenges. But we had learned that love and understanding could overcome even the deepest divisions. Looking back, I realized that being disowned had forced me to find my own strength and create my own path. It had shown me the power of love and the importance of standing up for what you believe in. My family's acceptance of Aaliyah was not just a victory for us, but a testament to the possibility of change, even in the most rigid of hearts. We had proven that love, patience, and perseverance could triumph over hate and prejudice. Our story wasn't just about being disowned and damned. It was about redemption, resilience, and the unbreakable bonds of love. And for that, I was eternally grateful.